I'm really, really happy that we finally connected.
Yeah, likewise.
Glad to see you, and thank you very much for your patience and that you found time for us as well.
My pleasure.
And for ones who join us, I'm really happy to introduce Jean-Yves. He is the founder of Coworking Europe Conference and also socialworkplaces.com and plenty of other conferences, as I know, but never been on another ones except of Coworking Europe. But that one I really loved. I invited you because the topic of the co-working are really hot at the moment, and we are doing some series of interview about the trends in the workplaces, and just in few of interviews we already touched a little bit the co-working industry, but everyone are actually looking for new information, what will happen, because of course the crisis that we have at the moment are a big opportunity for the co-workings in the one hand, because a lot of people will start to work remotely, but on the other hand it's completely new circumstances. So please tell us what is happening in this industry, what the new trends. And
overall, I wish I know, but where do you want to start? Is it about the next step, or is it about the current time, or?
How do you think what will happen when the post-pandemic situation will start? So when we will all get out from the isolation? Mm-hmm. And I think it will be a few, two steps actually. First, when it will be still the pandemic time, but it will be just in light version. And maybe second one, it's when we all will adapt to kind of a remote work as well, and the next step after the pandemic.
Yeah, so I think a lot of us see that things are like changing super rapidly. And all the friction points that we knew were slowing the process of the adoption process of remote working and digital
Mm-hmm.
working. Those elements, those factors are gone in just a fraction of a second due to the COVID crisis, and everything which was, limiting the development.
Да, у нас в Zoom.
Sorry, Jenny, Елизавета, выключите, пожалуйста, звук, а то вы перескакиваете.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, Jenny.
Yeah. No, so it's like I read something. Okay, we have been learning in 1 hour what in normal time we would have learned in 10 years. I mean, regarding the employers, the way to distribute the workforce, work remotely, have digital meetings like we are having now. A lot of those things were existing already, and there was a lot of trends which were already taking place. Of course, coworking was there, was becoming more and more an option for a bigger deal of companies and startups and small businesses. But it was not yet embraced massively. It was still the early adopters stage, this famous curve of adoption. Then you have the pioneers and the early adopters, and then the big crowd of the people coming in, and then the more conservative people just joining at the end of the curve. It's like we are speeding up this process right now. Yes, what we see or what we expect is coworking won't be different than that. So all those trends regarding smart mobility, sustainable usage of building, urban planning, local supply for food, all those trends which have been around for quite a while now. All of a sudden, the adoption process seems to speed up. And I guess that's what we will learn quite rapidly. And so regarding coworking, it's true that no, a big brick break was indeed the management culture of many companies, who were really thinking that, okay, as a manager, I need to have the people close by, because otherwise I can watch them, I can control what they are doing.
Yeah.
They all figured out that no, it's not what keeps your team together. It's not. Leadership matters much more than controlled processes. And if procrastination is something that can happen, this is not the best way to deal with it, or to cope with it. Just asking the people to spend 2 or 3 hours in the commuting just to go to the head office. And that's a very strong learning that we are seeing now, or many companies everywhere. I guess Russia is no exception. But it's true that I just read where the discussion with some people. One of the key factors indeed, accepted is home working in companies, and there is a huge difference between countries. So, for instance, in the Nordic or in the Netherlands, home working is something that is way more accepted in companies than in Spain or France or some other places. I read, I think, Slovakia or countries like that. So that's really impressive how different this culture of adoption is there, and that's a lot to do with how open the culture of the companies are. And it's true that in countries such as Sweden or Denmark or the Netherlands, which are by definition culture which are more open, more connected with the world, it's true that home working was something which was less an issue than in some other companies in some other countries. So we really see that this is a big element of, if we want to analyze what will come next. But what happens now with the COVID crisis, all those countries which were really reluctant on average for home working adoption and remote working adoptions now have a real life experiment of how it could be operated in the future. So and employees will have a strong argument to say, okay, give me a break with your idea of have to be there every day and waste 1/3 of my awake life every day just having to commute, even if I can watch Netflix series and listen to nice podcasts like yours in the train. This is something that also employers won't be able to force to happen anymore, at least for a big deal of companies or organization. That's all I think what things are going to happen. But also when we speak with a lot of people, we see there is a before and an after the crisis, and this will definitely be a big driver of changes also for the adoption of flexible workspace solution. And that's the other thing, because as 80% of the population, I don't know what's the number in Russia, but I read that it was similar due to the lockdown. And if you have 80% of the population home working, and especially in cities where people are in small flats or not big apartments, and they are with the kids and the family, and they are desocializing, even if we have the Zoom and Instagram streaming and conferences, that's not enough. People need to meet and have a social life, and that's another strong learning that because in many countries, as we said, where home working was not something which was massively accepted. For instance, I'm in Belgium. Home working is, I think, accepted by 35 to 40% of the companies. But
you're lucky.
yes, I know, and we are in the good half of the statistics Europe-wise, but still we are closer to the average than the Netherlands or Sweden. And of course you have differences also by industries. So for instance, in the government, this is something which is harder in some places than in some other. And when you say that they're accepting home working, it's also very limited, because within this 40% or 35%, you might have, I don't know, 60% of the company allowing 1 day a week, if not 1 day a month of home working. And some others saying, okay, it can be 3 days a month. So you still have a big distance between a massive acceptance of home working as something really substantial in the whole work time that you are having in working for your company, and just saying, okay, you can work from home one day a week. So that's also this process that is going to happen. And as we are still behind on average, and again taking into the best in the class being Sweden, the Nordic, the Netherlands, and on average other European countries, for instance, that home working is still in the process of having to be adopted by a bigger slice of the market. Consider how far coworking still is in terms of acceptance level for those companies. But while we are learning that home working can work, and you don't have to watch every minute what your people are doing because you fear that they could procrastinate, we are at the same time learning that home working is just the beginning of the solution, and that home working more than 1 day a week, paradoxically, is very hard, because we desocialize, there is a lot of distraction. The way your home is organized, not everyone is I'm lucky I have my own office in my house, in my home, but with my family around, so we can have a chat like we are.
Yeah.
But I know I'm an exception, and I'm fortunate enough to live in a suburban area, have a garden and everything. That's not the majority of the population, and so you need something in between, and that's where coworking can come as the best of both worlds. Let's say that you allow remote working, you less commuting, that you can figure out how to have chats like rehiring, small meetings, and socializing, and in the meantime, not being limited by how your home is laid out and organized and how big it is. That being said, what we figure out as well is that full-time co-working is not the solution either. That most likely what we are going to see, and those were prognoses we were hearing a long time ago, but just it was not happening fast enough because of all the friction that we know, cultural adoption, difference in countries, even the law. You know, for instance, I remember when we started our co-working space 8-9 years ago, we still were facing restriction in terms of security level, that if you are freelancers, there were no problem. If you are startups, there barely were any problem. But someone who is a member of the co-working space, being an employee of a company which is somewhere else, was accountable for security measures, healthy things that, you know, co-working space, of course, has to provide with the minimal security levels. But according to the sector you are in, it could be different, because it's part of, you know, big negotiation between unions and employers and everything. So slowly it changes, and we could be integrating a global package of law regarding those how you set up your facility and comply with all these requirements. But this was part of why it could be elements that could slow the process of adoption process of co-working by employers. And also so it means that altogether, what we were saying, and what will maybe become more and more clear for biggest part of the working population, or of the employers, is that the balance will likely be between maybe 1 day a week of home working, 2 days a week of co-working, and 2 days you have to go to the head office, and that we will have some kind of balance between those 3 locations, where you can indeed comply or really address those different needs at the different times and related to different kind of tasks you need to have, and that you can distribute according in a way that you look at the different place where you work from that perspective of different tasks or different way to organize yourself. And for different teams, you might have either just because you need to be home, because you need to deal with your kids on the days off, or you need to socialize with people or meet some of your local colleagues nearby, and then you go to the co-working space. And 1 or 2 days a week, you need to go to the head office because there are bigger decisions to be made. That you really need that meeting. That is a part also of how you keep your company culture together. And more and more, what we see and expect is this understanding that this will become the balance. And the last thing is, so those are more from the user perspective, the members perspective, and the other side. Of course, you have the time that will come just after the crisis, and we are going through an economical crisis. We know it. So that's also those companies are figuring out, because of this process, that they can optimize the way they use their real estate needs, and their co-working comes at the right moment, at the right opportunity, just to address that and flexibilize this cost, make it, to take it away from your liability and more make it an asset which is more predictable and more secure on the longer term if another crisis could happen. And this is something really strong also we expect to see in the future. I don't know if you read this statement from JP Morgan in the US. I heard that JP Morgan is one of the biggest real estate user in New York or in Manhattan. And the CEO was saying, okay, after the crisis, I can perfectly figure out that we will be much more real estate light for our usage, because it was like this revelation moment, this epiphany of, oh yes, we could work differently. and for the co-working industry, it's really to find our place and our position between this scope of different needs from the home office to the headquarters. Because also something I didn't mention, and I'm stopped there, I promise, is that in most of our countries, co-working space, we first serve the startup population and freelancers population.
Yeah.
Though the offering is wide enough in a big deal of all our countries to serve that population. Those startups or freelancers who are not in co-working space is because they don't see the use, or it's too costly, but the percentage of this population who finds appropriate to work from a co-working space is in co-working spaces. In Berlin, it has been some years ago, for instance, that a small team of 5 people couldn't find an office anymore for 5 people. They have to go to co-working space. So a portion of the market is already captured by the co-working operators, at least in some cities, or very dynamic entrepreneurial, from an entrepreneurial perspective, cities such as Berlin or Paris. So this co-working is taken already. So now the next phase is the biggest part is, of course, all this population of people working for companies as employees. So that's the decision is made by the employer regarding, because the employer will pay for the co-working space. And that's really where the challenge is now. And maybe one of the issue we will see, or the bottleneck will be that just there is not enough co-working space around for the demand.
Yeah, that's a huge amount of information.
Yeah. You started with a wide question, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, I will put some points for everyone who joined us in the moment, that we were talking that now we are experiencing a huge wave of remote and home working. for everyone, and it's new for lots of people. And if we we're expecting this will happen in 10 years, it's happening now, and it's like in a very short period of time. And that's where also the co-working spaces can be helpful, because it's of course was first made exactly for people who work remotely. And if we're speaking about working from home, it's not always a great idea for working quite often from home, because we have a lot of distractions and we also need to socialize with people. But if we don't need to be in the office 5 days a week, then just a moment, then we need some places where we can work, and it's home or co-working spaces, and we need to choose the balance in this, so we can partly work from home, partly work from the co-working space, and come to the office when we really need it, right? I lost you. I lost you. Okay, here you are. Yeah, so, and when we were talking about co-workings before the crisis especially, we knew that first the whole co-working industry started with spaces for freelancers or for the startups. But later we saw the trend when a lot of employees were coming to the co-working spaces, and where companies started to rent places for their employees. And generally it was mostly the commercial projects, the main part of the co-working spaces, right? So
yes. So now we really see that we see bigger projects and addressing other needs, accommodating big teams. So there are some operators just accommodating 200 people or 300 people.
Oh.
So in Warsaw, for instance, when we had the Coworking Europe conference last year, the market, so they started maybe a bit later with less independent workspaces in the beginning, but all of a sudden, because it's a booming city in terms of real estate construction and everything, so now the new buildings are directly planning to have like 25 to 30% of their whole surface dedicated to co-working services.
The buildings itself, the business centers.
Yes. So you have big building companies and developers so there is a lot of new towers and skyscrapers in Warsaw, for instance, because that's one of the area in Europe where you can still build that kind of big buildings. In most of the European capital, at least in Western Europe, now you have restriction because they want to protect the whole neighborhoods and the look and feel of the city. So it means that you have a big deal of developers who went to Eastern Europe, like in countries such as Poland. And now when you go to Poland, the last time I went to Moscow, it was the same thing, so all this New York popping up. We see the same thing. Just
an island with this New York,
Yeah, I know.
New York Island.
And you have that, and you have a lot of new development. And those property owners, when they plan the building and they build it up, they from the beginning on. And that's one of the new things that we have been seeing for the last years, is they say, okay, 30% of the building will be devoted to co-working services, either ourselves, and that's why you see big property companies creating their own co-working brands, or partnering up with the players. And it used to be WeWork not so long ago, or IWDG or CIC, or so some other people like that. And and why do they do that? Because number one, they see that the tenants and the users of space are looking for that. They want ability to scale up. They want more amenities. So, for instance, more so a big deal of the new take-ups are by foreign companies where setting up the subsidiaries in Poland because there was a good reputation for engineering and IT development, and when they want to cover all Europe, from a technical perspective, they have been a lot to open up offices there and presence there, and they use co-working space because it makes a lot of sense. It's turnkey. You can just go for it right away, and also because they figure out more and more. And that's not only, and that I took the Warsaw example, but we see that in many more countries now. As a property owner, it's a big attraction. It's good to have co-working operators in-house because it brings all these amenities and the look and feel, and this brings value to the building at the end of the day, because usually the co-working space is connected with meeting rooms, and you have events in-house. It's nice and modern. It's warm, a little bit like a hotel, and then you have all these people flowing in and out with cool. So also as from employer retention perspective, it become more and more important to take into that the environment where your new hires and new talents will work from, because they pay attention to that more and more. We hear many more stories about. For instance, I heard, for instance, the story in Belgium yesterday or Monday. Emperor was explaining that he had the problem because he couldn't hire some very good talents, because when they asked, okay, do you have a place when I can put my bike? He said, oh no, never thought about it. And the employee, which was super good and with very good records, said, okay, not for me. I want to come by bike. And those are things that are becoming super critical for even from an employer perspective. So there are so many reasons why co-working is becoming either a thing you need to have in your portfolio of offering, or something that you do yourself, or something that simply is which is the new office model, that making a service like you have in a so having a service like anything, like your IT is becoming a service. So many things are becoming asset light. And we expect the same thing to happen to co-working. And so it means that the usage of real estate will become better optimized. Companies will lower the weight on the balance sheets from the real estate. And as I said, personally, I think we will have bottleneck issue, meaning that the offering, the co-working offering, is still too small and not appropriate enough to address the demand that will grow very fast.
Why not appropriate?
Because even if it grew, so for instance, if you go to London or Amsterdam or New York, yes, you have a lot of co-working offering, and to the extent that there is a price war in some of these places. I don't know what the situation is in Moscow, but that's something that indeed was a threat for the co-working industry, for some co-working operators, because they open up too fast in areas which were not where the demand was not big enough. But it was before the COVID, and it was before everything we are saying now. And so with the exception of those big cities, so for instance, we are speaking about Paris and Berlin and Amsterdam and all this, Barcelona. So those are the big metropoles. I'm speaking about Europe, that
of course
I know the best. But those metro areas, it's just I don't know, maybe 10% of their real workforce, or of the total people who are working for any company. And and when you go outside those big metros, the penetration of coworking is much lower, because again, the demand was driven in the beginning by the startups and digital working young people, Gen Y and everything. So now if we move towards a model where we have more and more people who are regular employees, where we speak really about a shift in the office model towards a more flexible model, it means that we have way more people who are not working from the city centers of those big metro, and that's where the demand will rise, and so far can be addressed because of a shortage of coworking offering by players outside those big metros. So I give you an example. In France, for instance, from the top of my, I think 50 to 60% of the whole coworking offering is just in Paris. And of course, Paris is the biggest economic engine of France, but it's totally disproportionate if we take into account the whole French economy. And why is it so? Because indeed, coworking was very popular in the beginning with all this digital native generation and companies who are working more distributedly and with different needs. But now that as we said, that we are entering this second chapter or third chapter of the demand in the rise of the demand, where we address any kind of potential employee or maybe older generation. That's where now we will see the demand rise, and it's not very much addressed for the moment from what I see.
Yeah, of course. And I believe that all of the situations exactly will change a little bit after this whole crisis, because we will have a big demand on the co-working spaces probably. Because if we're also speaking of financial crisis, the companies will have to reduce the spaces that they're renting or the people whom they are paying. Just finishing this topic about the owners and clients of the co-working spaces, do you think the balance, because for example before the crisis we had mostly exactly the commercial owners of the co-working spaces, like a big chains like Huwart and so on, or exactly what you said about the property managers? Do you think now it will make sense for the companies to have their own co-working spaces inside of their office spaces, or maybe somewhere in the other parts of the towns or the cities for the employees who will work remotely?
You mean the property owners?
Not the property owners, but the companies, the business.
So that they would partner up with co-working space for their office needs.
Because if we see the big companies who have lots of employees and the part of them will start to work remotely, will they use the office space, or maybe they will provide for them their own co-working space? Could be their.
So you mean I don't know. Gazprom will have its own co-working space.
Yes, for example.
Okay. We see different models. So for instance, we know some companies who are actually contacting big companies who have real estate, and they create co-working space in the buildings for them to optimize the spare space that is not used by employees. So I'll give you an example. We have I think it's a big IT company in Belgium, and this company comes to them and say, okay, you have, because you implemented new hot desking policy and where people don't have their own desk and have to use meeting rooms for some of the, in a different ways. So you're in bigger number of companies, you already have this trend of what they call active workplace. So where they indeed rethought how the building was operating or the office was operating, with open space, desking, with some of home working, with no more private offices, but
with lots of facilities and
exactly. So the mindset of what we know of activity-based work, what they call activity-based work workspace, which is actually operating like a co-working space to some extent, but only for the people of the company.
Yeah.
So that culture, those trends are in I don't know the numbers, but it's something which has been already implemented in a bigger in a bigger proportion of the big companies, at least. I don't know for the small and medium businesses, but I'm not sure it that far. So that's the paradox. We think that the big companies are the slowest to adopt innovative models, but actually I think more the small and the SMEs are the latest to embrace it. But okay, and so it means that way of operating has been there for those companies. And these operators, for instance, it comes to them and say, yeah, because you have this I don't know 500 square meters that is not as much use as this used to be. I propose you to put my brand and give access, so employees from other companies can work from your facility, and I share the revenue with you that is provided. So and they have opened 10 locations in Belgium, I think, something like that. And I don't know how good it's working, but I know. So I think if I'm Gazprom or I don't know, or Shell, or I don't know, Sberbank or whatever. So I think co-working space in house, they can already do it. No, it's just how you manage your space.
Activity-based working, you mean?
The question is, are you open enough to go and say do the same thing, but in a place which is managed by a third party, a co-working space? And yes, we saw that. For instance, before the premise WeWork was disclosing that 40% of their revenue were coming from managed services for companies. So actually, they were more a facility manager than a co-working space, and they were turning IBM's building into kind of nice co-working space, cool and everything, powered by WeWork. But it was for employees of IBM, and maybe they had some of their partner suppliers who could work from this place as well. So it depends on what's our definition of co-working. You know, it's
very interesting. Because we saw for a few years, we saw the trend how co-working were becoming more similar to offices, to modern offices, and now we see how offices are becoming more co-working. It's like
yeah, exactly. Yeah, because you have if you analyze why co-working has been so successful, you have different elements. Of course, there is the innovative business model, because when you as a freelancer, when you can't afford to have your own office, and it makes no sense, because why not work from home? So co-working is there because you need a place where you can concentrate and be efficient, where you can socialize, when you can be either entertained or trained or find or network or be involved in a community or locally, and it can be just because you like to hang out with people that you meet or encounter, or because it makes sense business wise. So there is many reasons for that, but also because the co-working space were designed in a way which were much more embracing and implementing the startup mentality. And the startup mentality was something which was totally inspired by the Silicon Valley, and with this idea that a workspace doesn't need to look like something dull and cold and distant, but it could look more and more like your living room, with a kitchen. With your kitchen, with a ping pong table, and where you can be entertained and just hang out and have drinks with your friends. And this is more design trend in the way or we figure out what a workspace has to look like nowadays, or look like more the hotel lobby because that's also a big driver, that you, when you now look at new co-working space, big ones, and you compare it with a lobby hotel, it's almost the same thing now. But it has a reason, because it needs to be better. You need the hospitality feeling, that you need to feel that you are welcome, and that you can go in and out without having to badge every time and say to a security guard and why are you here, and feel like you're anything but welcome. So those are really cultural changes that are there, and this part of the success of coworking is less to do with this business model, but more with a deeper trend in how we figure out what the workspace has to look. So if you go to Microsoft, or you go to a big consultancy firm office, which is their own office, and you compare it with traditional I don't know, bank or old-fashioned company, it looks more and more like a startup incubator, the consultancy company, or the Microsoft ones, and it has been like that for years, because there is this influence, so, but it doesn't mean that because you embrace that and book coaches and that your office looks more like a hotel lobby, that you are in the co-working business or putting in place a co-working thing. It is more to do with how you figure out what the workspace has to do internally, and let you be influenced by that, then make the big jump of actually outsourcing all your real estate and office needs to a service company, which is a co-working space, and accept it and take the figure out that you can earn a lot in terms of how you can accommodate better your employees in order not to force them to commute 2 hours a day, to meet new people, to lower the cost, because you don't need to make a deposit, you don't need to take a huge financial risk just leasing for 5 or 10 years, etc.
Yeah, of course, I totally agree. And how do you think about, if we speak about new models of co-working and the future of co-working, how do you think the layout of the future of in the future will look like for co-working spaces?
As you say, I think we see more and more the boundaries between the hospitality active business, like hotels.
I will add that especially if we had lots of enclosed spaces, enclosed offices that were possible to rent before for a smaller team, will we have the same now in the co-working spaces, or we will increase the open plan also for for freelancing and so on?
You mean that your place as a company would host suppliers or startups? Or
yeah, should we plan the co-working based that we will need to accommodate teams and will provide them more places for enclosed places, spaces, or we will need to provide more open plan, and what kind of facilities as well should be in the layout also?
It's hard to say. That, for instance, when we spoke about companies having people in co-working spaces, so for instance, when you say, I don't know, in Berlin you had BMW who had team at Bed House. It was like 7 years ago, 8 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Or Siemens, who had people at another startup incubator, or Orange in France, which has a team in Numa. It was called Numa at the time, a startup incubator in Paris, very famous. And but most of the time, those were people who were like outliers of the companies working for innovation department, and they were like the little guy that we would let play with startups and try to creating for the innovation department of the company. And it was more, sometimes it looked more like a PR action than really something substantial, which was really changing the way the company was operating. And so when we were speaking with coworking space and asking that question, oh, do you have bigger companies than you? And they were very proud to say, yes, we have Siemens, we have the BMW, and we have Nestle, and we have, and when you scratch a little bit, you figure out, yes, but it's just the starter team of Siemens in Frankfurt. So there were like maybe 10 people who were just playing a little bit, and but it was not really something which was part of the whole process in the company. So it was not really for this company embracing coworking. And even now, I think a big deal of those examples, there was still a big deal of those examples. So it's not like, we are not yet with the example of like the IBMs which are going to take a full floor of a coworking space. So there are examples of that, of course, more and more, but it remains still the exception. And the purpose is more like just to make savings on the real estate costs when they create an entity or subsidiary in different countries. So that's why you have so many expats in those co-working spaces, for instance, as well, the big brands. And yes, you could have companies. As the example I was taking was this inside co-working operated by this brand in Belgium. Yeah, you could have that, but you need the suppliers to agree to have the people working from there. You know, if I am Sberbank or Gazprom or some of those big guys, their suppliers are also big companies which their own culture and their own conservatism, and and they might not want to have all those their people just in one company's office. So I don't know. Every case is particular. It would be different if you say, okay, as Gazprom or Sberbank, I will have part of my team distributed in different co-working space, where they can meet also with other suppliers who are also distributed, who have also the team distributed in different locations. And then, but it's a very different mental shift that you need to take place for that. And of course, there are some very security sensitive departments. They don't want to, you know, those are quite often the concern of the company when we speak working. Yes, but and this guy will listen to what I'm saying. And yes, it's true. You have to be careful. But there are ways today to be careful as well. And when you walk from the train in the coach, the level of risk is also very important. So there are some best practices to have in order to lower the risk from that perspective. It's there, and we have to acknowledge it. But the corking is just one of another situation when you have to be careful and not a less safe environment than any other places you would walk from.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, and that's exactly what we discussed previously, that the main concern for the big companies is exactly security reasons, especially for confidentiality and so on. And my last question, I think, how do you think, or maybe you have any ideas, how to protect the co-working users after we will start coming back to the offices and to the co-working spaces as well, in this COVID moment when the whole, I think you understand me, how to protect people, because it's very easy to spread this thing.
You mean make your space safe when we go out of the lockdown? Yeah, I think that's what we hear everywhere. So for instance, here in Belgium, they speak about reopening schools, and they would have maximum eight pupils per class. So that means that they will have to have time slots. So 3 hours for a group, and then 3 hours for another group, and everything. And to keep the social distancing. So co-working will be no exception. We will have to widen the square meterage per user, put sanitizer everywhere, have masks most likely. So I have sanitizer that you can clean your table 8 times a day maybe. be sure that people, when they cross in the corridor, they let one go in and the other then can follow it, that they don't cross too close to one another.
And it probably will be less sharing activities like I don't know, teacups or like cookies or something.
Yeah, or 2 meters away from one another. Yeah, but it will be it will be a slow process. And because we had a discussion already 1 month ago with the guys in China and Korea and South Korea, and actually they could reopen the space, but only at the beginning less than 15% of their members were showing up. Now it increased, but it's not that because you are reopening, all the people will flow in again like it was before crisis. So it's a slow. People will come in slowly, and yes, as a space manager, you have to try to minimize the risk of touching. For instance, there is no this small plastic pieces that allows you to open a door with your arm instead of your hand. I read there is the guys in the Netherlands. They have put in place it's like a sheet of paper that you put on table, like at McDonald's, that you put on your plate. You see, to protect it. And so once you have stopped working, you throw it away. It's disposable. And so you arrive, you take your sheet of paper, you put it on your desk, like if you were at the canteen. And they even have like plexi cubicles when you can see the people, but you are protected. I'm not sure we have to go that far, but maybe, I don't know. But yeah, for sure, the first weeks and maybe months, we will, but like in any office, that's no difference. So when you go to a grocery store now, you have the lady with the mask and the plexi cubicle protecting the cashier. In co-working space, events, forget it, or way less. Meeting rooms, maybe instead of having 12 people in the meeting room, you will allow only 4. I know, those are things that measures that, but that the member will demand and requires, and it's just normal. At least,
but in terms of the financial reasons, because what I'm listening in the moment, it's how many co-working spaces will survive this period, because if with so low percentage of the audience, it will be financially hard to survive.
Yeah, we all fear that there will be a lot of casualties, and it's too early to say, but their co-working is no different as any other small business. I know how they are dealing with that in Russia, but for instance, in most of the European countries, for instance, they're allowed to have credit
yes,
kind of holiday. You
have the credit holidays.
At least for 2 months, I think. Sometimes it depends on the bank, but normally there are still some issues because some banks are still reluctant, but so they got a grantee from the government. It's not the same in every place. It's, for instance,
for Russia, it's like we have some tax holidays, but not for everyone, and like tax discounts. Yeah. For some area, some sectors, business sectors, but credit holidays we don't have.
Yeah,
it's a problem at the moment. So everyone who needs the credit holidays, if you are a business, so you have to deal with your bank, and if they will agree to you, maybe.
Yeah. So for instance, I think it's in Italy, they gave 100% guarantee to the banks, but in France they only gave 90%, and because of 10% differences, the banks are still investigating every demand, every credit request. So according to countries, dealt with very differently. In many countries, we have this what we call economical unemployment. So instead of firing all your employees, you can put them temporarily under unemployment conditions. For instance, in Belgium, I think we have 1 million people. are under this thing. So for instance, in our co-working space, our employees are all under this scheme, and it was something that has been around for a while, but it was made more flexible after the crisis of 2008, because too many companies went bankrupt. And it's a way to, instead of just killing all the businesses, it's like putting them in hibernation. So it's like you cover it up during the time of the crisis, and that's covered by the state. And but there are some also grants for companies that are planned in some countries, I know, but it's coming too late. So the payment process and everything. So it means that co-working space, when we discuss with some, it's not a comprehensive, so it's just a few.
Yeah, of course.
But the operators say that in general, the membership, there is no huge cancellation in terms of membership, at least so far, because also a big deal of them just made granted payment holidays to the members. So for instance, we spoke with Huwart in Milan, just from the beginning, just asked the members to pay 10% of the subscriptions just to cover the electricity and gas, because in order to protect their own members and keep the relationship with them. That's something we did, for instance, also in our spaces. And as a result, some others just ask the regular payment. It's up to anyone. But it means that in terms of membership, there is no big drop. So all people canceling all the from what I hear, but again, it's not scientific. It's just a few discussion I had here and there. The memberships levels remain okay, but the bigger challenge will be: will the member bills still be financially healthy at the end of the crisis? So it will be less tenants canceling the subscription because they want to keep their cash for the upcoming months, but more members who want to stay, but they can because they just go bankrupt. And that's where the real danger is for co-working space for the moment. Also, the negotiation with the landlords. Landlords have to take their loss in the crisis as well. So there's a lot of negotiation according to how flexible the property owner is or not. So if you are leasing from a big insurance company, it will be harder than if it's if you know the owner personally. But again, we speak about exceptional circumstances, and
of course, and we don't know how long it will take, so it's hard to say. By the way, guys, if you have some questions to Jean-Yves, you can ask it in chat, or you can connect your audio and start asking with the audio. Because we still have some people with us. And Jean-Yves, just while people are thinking, I have finishing. So it's I just have a huge amount of questions. I can keep asking. Sorry. Do you think it's a good time to think of starting a co-working business at the moment? Because it might be a new interesting opportunities, or not?
As I said, and also from conversation we are having with different players. It's speeding up the acknowledgement process that co-working and office as a service, to take a bigger name, but co-working is more the hospitality way to address office as a service. Their acknowledgement is there because of everything we mentioned previously. So that it will be the office model of the future. That is no doubt about it. The challenge is now to manage this transition. And while we expect to see a lot of demand, but on the other hand, are the providers ready to provide with that? because difference operating, yeah, we have a lot more bigger players than we used to be. Then we're more professional, everything. But still, if you take I think it was London, I think, which is a city with the highest number of co-working space of the volume of square meters devoted to co-working, I think, and it's only 7% of the overall office market, and London is the biggest place in terms of co-working offering. On average, you are more, and if you take Brussels, it might be 1%. Paris, those numbers exist, but it might be 3%. And of course, lately, the biggest real estate deals were made by co-working operators, but it's only a matter of 1 or 2 years, or maybe a little bit more according to the places. So it means that it's still very, very, very low, and then you still have to manage those long-term lease contracts by the other companies. So they have to finish those leases before turning themselves to a new model, or due to the negotiation they have with the landlords or the urgency, everything, that they could speed up the process. That's really unclear for the moment how fast it will go. What we can say is it's coming. We have been saying it's coming and will be the model for the future. We've been saying it for years, but we thought it would take 15 years or 20 years. It might take 5 or 3 because of
we don't know.
Yes, but now there was still a lot of question marks regarding how the transition will go, and there were also, as we say, about security, about the fact that, okay, great to have a lot of co-working space in downtown Moscow or downtown St. Petersburg, but it doesn't solve the commuting issue of many people. So there is something that will be also very critical is how receptive the people will be about sustainability and sustainable models. So the smart mobility, how you bring jobs back in the suburbs and countryside, which is very sensitive questions now, because we know that this crisis is also putting a lot of critical question on the table about this model of concentrating everything in big metros, having to live in 5 square meters, so that we all fear that we will have to live like people live in Hong Kong. So because of how we manage things, so co-working is here as an answer to give a new option regarding that, and I think it's really critical.
Thank you very much. We have some questions. I will say first short question from Maria Uvarova. I think you know her very well. Dear Jean-Yves, I'm happy to hear and see you. I'm sure that this crisis is absolutely new chance for co-workings. Are you expecting some difficulties with Co-working Europe conference? Are you still scheduling it for November?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, of course, we deal with the situation. So yeah, so far so good. The Austria government is allowing big events again after the summer, so we are okay. Austria was also one of the safe place regarding the.
It will be in Austria this year.
Yeah, it's in Vienna in the end of November. So we have still 7 months to go. And in terms of registration, we had only a little drop of 10% as opposed to last year. So it gives us confidence that everything will be okay. We're also discussing with the sponsors there. So we hope we are fortunate enough to have it in the end of the year. And yeah, so far we keep everything on track. Speakers are confirming their attendance in the presence. Yeah, of course, there is a lot of doubts. We try to
we'll hope we will be able to go.
Yeah, you're welcome. Sure.
And we have some questions from Christina. Christina, you can connect if you want. Oh, sorry, not Christina, Елизавета. I'm sorry, Елизавета.
Yeah, I was looking for Christina, and I got that you meant me.
I'm very sorry.
Hi there, Jean-Yves, thank you for the lecture. That was really insightful for me. And Katya, thank you, of course, for hosting it. Thank you for this opportunity to ask some questions. I'll start with the story, I guess. I'm working on a project now, which is a co-working, but for homeschoolers. Homeschoolers are people who decided to take their children from public or private schools and educate their children themselves. That's quite a point in Moscow. There are a lot of such schools here, and typically it's 5 to 7 children and 1 or 2 adults or teacher. And I decided to create a space for these people because for them it's a really huge problem to find a place. It's hard to rent a flat, and it's quite expensive for this purpose. And it's hard to rent some other space. It's really a trick here. So I decided to create a co-working for them, so where children and these teachers could do whatever they want, study how they like it. And I have a question, how to actually do it, because it's children, they're running, they're laughing, they're screaming sometimes, and how to secure this concept, this layout of co-working where people can concentrate when they have some kind of private space there and do whatever they want without influencing others.
What you have in mind is having a group of 6, 7 people each, is it?
Yeah, there are a lot of groups. Yeah, it's a group of 5 to 7 children, and there could be several of these groups.
So for instance, you could have 10 small groups like that at the same time. So yeah. I assume that you need to lay out your space in a way that is children friendly, and have divided in different small classrooms. So for instance, you have a lot of co-working space which are having regular trainings for adults, but I could figure out is similar, just that you have to assess properly how you put that in place, and what's the surface needed for that for 7 people, what is according to the age, and which is I don't know, it's just low thinking, but in terms of management, I think you could manage it the way regular co-working space manage their meeting room booking. So that you have a platform, you can book from X number of hours for this classroom for the home teacher, and manage it this way. That's what I would guess.
Okay, so it would be a place where a lot of some meeting rooms and a few space, I don't know, like public space of coffee points, libraries, some of that kind, right?
Yeah, and I assume that your customer would be the teacher.
Yeah.
So now that you have all those tools allowing you to manage bookings for rooms, so that it's a meeting room or a room for kids to learn and play, it's not very different in terms of model.
Okay.
Again, I thinking out loudly.
Okay, thank you. That was my question.
Yeah, thank you, Elizaveta. So Jean-Yves, thank you very much one more time for coming.
Welcome.
It was a big pleasure for all of us, and I'm sorry for all of these technical problems.
No, I don't know what happened. I might have a too old phone. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know where.
By the way, I should have been in Moscow right now because we were planning to have a discussion with the guy from JLL, and and I think this week I was planned to be in, or next week I was planned to be in Moscow. Yeah, will be postponed.
We will be happy to see you in Moscow and in JLL as well. So please come.
No, I love to be here.
But once it will be possible, because now you can just come to Moscow and stay for 2 weeks in the hospital first.
Yeah. Nice perspective. Yeah, indeed.
Not really. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you
You're
for
welcome.
everyone who joined us. Yeah, hope to see you again. Good luck.
Perfect. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.